1984. The Arzamas Machinery Construction Plant, Arzamas, Russia. 8 wheels. A single diesel engine. Welded steel no thicker than a man's thumb. It rolls out of the factory floor, its hull angular and blunt, carrying 7 soldiers crammed into a space barely large enough to stand. It looks like the vehicle before it. It looks like the vehicle before that one. It looks, frankly, obsolete before it even reaches its first posting. Soviet officers who had fought in Afghanistan looked at it and saw the same problems all over again. Thin armour, no rear exit, a gun that barely reached the fighters shooting down from the ridgelines above mountain roads. Western analysts who saw it dismissed it as another incremental revision of a tired Cold War formula. On paper, it offered no dramatic breakthrough. It was not a tank. It was not fast enough to evade contact. Its steel would stop a rifle round and little else. It would go on to fight in Afghanistan, in the ruins of Grozny, on a Kosovo airfield at the edge of a confrontation between nuclear powers, in the deserts of Syria, and on the frozen fields of eastern Ukraine. It would spread to more than 35 nations. More than 5,000 would be built, with production continuing under a new designation nearly 40 years after the original design left the drawing board. And as of today, in the spring of 2026, vehicles from this family are still being destroyed and still being captured in an active land war in Europe. Its designation was the BTR-80, and it was the most widely fielded wheeled armoured personnel carrier in the history of the Soviet Empire and the empire that succeeded it. To understand why the BTR-80 existed, you need to understand what was happening to Soviet soldiers on the roads of Afghanistan in 1980. The Soviet 40th Army that invaded in December 1979 was equipped with the BTR-60 and the BTR-70, 8-wheeled armoured personnel carriers built around a fundamental philosophical error. They were designed to carry infantry across European plains against a conventional enemy. Afghanistan was not Europe. Afghanistan was narrow mountain passes, hairpin roads carved into cliff faces, and fighters with rocket-propelled grenade launchers on every ridgeline above. The BTR-60 and 70 ran on paired gasoline engines mounted in the rear hull. A single rocket-propelled grenade into the engine bay did not disable the vehicle. It set it on fire. The 7 soldiers inside had no way out except through small hatches between the second and third wheel axles, hatches that forced men to climb out one at a time onto the wheel wells, directly into the fire already coming from above. Soviet motorized riflemen in Afghanistan stopped riding inside their vehicles entirely. They rode on top of the hull instead, exposed to everything, because the alternative was worse. The gun turret elevated to only 30 degrees above horizontal. The fighters shooting at Soviet convoys were often 60 or 70 degrees above them. The gun could not be brought to bear. The 38th Research Institute of the Russian Ministry of Defense recorded that in 1980 alone, the 40th Army lost 234 armoured personnel carriers. Roughly 30% fell to mines and improvised explosive devices. The remainder fell to rocket-propelled grenades and direct fire. These were not acceptable losses for a vehicle that was supposed to protect the men inside it. Chief designer Igor Sergeyevich Mukhin and his deputy Yevgeny Mikhailovich Murashkin at the Special Design Bureau of the Gorky automobile plant were given a direct brief. Fix it. Fix. Mukhin travelled personally to Afghanistan to see the problem himself. The vehicle they produced was the GAZ-5903, accepted into service in 1986. It solved each of the Afghan problems in sequence. The twin gasoline engines were replaced with a single Kamaz 7403 turbocharged diesel, producing 260 horsepower from a V8 cylinder block. Diesel fuel does not ignite as readily as gasoline. A single engine is simpler to maintain in the field and simpler to replace. The hatches were redesigned entirely. The new side doors split horizontally, with the upper half swinging forward to form a shield against frontal fire, and the lower half folding down into a step. All 7 soldiers could dismount simultaneously. They could dismount while the vehicle was still moving. The turret was rebuilt. The new mounting now elevated the 14.5mm heavy machine gun to 60 degrees above horizontal. The fighters on the ridgelines were now inside the gun's arc. 6 81mm smoke grenade launchers were added to the forward hull. The hull itself weighed 13.6 tons. The armour was 7 to 9mm of welded steel, angled at 45 degrees across the front glacis to deliver approximately 13mm of effective line-of-sight protection. It would stop assault rifle rounds. It would stop machine gun fire up to 12.7mm across the front arc. It would not stop a tank gun, an autocannon, or an anti-tank rocket at close range. That was not the vehicle's role. It was a battlefield taxi, a fire support platform, and a reconnaissance screen, built to move at 80 km/h on roads, 9 km/h through rivers without preparation, and to keep moving on run-flat tyres after losing a wheel or two. It was not elegant. It was not comfortable. It was effective. Before we get into where the BTR-80 actually fought, and how it performed from the mountains of Afghanistan to a confrontation on a Kosovo airfield, if you are finding value in this deep dive into Cold War military engineering, hit subscribe. It takes a second, costs nothing, and helps the channel grow. The BTR-80 arrived in Afghanistan in 1985, joining motor rifle units of the 40th Army around Bagram, along the Salang Corridor, and at Jalalabad. The redesigned turret proved its value immediately. Platoon commanders whose BTR-70s had been helpless under fire from ridgeline positions were now able to reply. According to documentation preserved at the Park Pobeda Museum in Nizhny Novgorod, a BTR-80 that struck an anti-tank mine on a mountain road lost its wheel, its suspension housing, and its fender entirely. It drove 10 kilometres under its own power. The crew survived with mild and moderate concussions. The vehicle was repaired within a day, but Afghanistan also revealed what the redesign had not fixed. The armour was still thin, and thin armour in urban terrain was not a disadvantage. It was a death sentence. December 31st, 1994. Grozny. 7 Russian motor rifle regiments and 1 independent brigade drove BTR-80s into the Chechen capital on New Year's Eve in close column formation, with infantry buttoned up inside. The plan assumed the city would capitulate quickly. It did not capitulate at all. Chechen 3- and 4-man teams armed with rocket-propelled grenade launchers had trained to do exactly one thing. They shot the first vehicle in every column, and the last vehicle in every column. Everything in the middle stopped. The 14.5mm machine gun could devastate infantry in the open. Against fighters shooting down from upper floors, from doorways at hull level, and from rubble directly beneath the gun's minimum depression angle, it could do almost nothing. General Alexander Galkin reported that Russian forces lost 225 armoured vehicles as unrepairable in the first month and a half of city fighting. A broader assessment found that roughly 38% of all armoured vehicles committed to Grozny went out of action at some point during the battle. The BTR-80's radio equipment used unencrypted frequencies in the 20 to 51.5 MHz range. Chechen fighters, many of them former Soviet conscripts who had trained on this exact equipment, monitored Russian communications in real time and coordinated their ambushes accordingly. Russian columns telegraphed their positions and intentions with every transmission. The battle nearly destroyed the Russian army's confidence in wheeled armoured vehicles entirely. And then, 5 years later, came the operation that established the BTR-80's claim on history. June 12, 1999. Kosovo. The Balkan Wars had ended. NATO was moving its peacekeeping force into Kosovo. Russia had been excluded from the command structure entirely. Approximately 200 Russian soldiers were at that moment deployed in Bosnia with NATO's stabilization force. On the morning of June 12th, those soldiers slipped out under cover of a routine exercise notice and drove 15 BTR-80s 600 kilometers through the night to Slatina airfield outside Pristina. Major Yunusbek Yevkurov, a military intelligence special forces officer who would later become the head of Ingushetia, had infiltrated Kosovo weeks earlier with a small advance party to prepare the ground. The Russian column arrived at Slatina approximately 20 minutes before the last Serbian forces withdrew. British paratroopers arrived hours later to find the airfield occupied, with BTR-80s parked across the runway and crews in position. The British Corps commander, General Mike Jackson, received a direct order from Supreme Allied Commander General Wesley Clark to seize the airfield from the Russians by force. General Jackson refused. He told Clark he would not start the Third World War. The Russian detachment held Slatina for several days before a negotiated settlement allowed NATO access. The BTR-80s had taken a geopolitical objective by speed and audacity that no diplomatic process could have secured. The British officer ordered to move against those vehicles was Captain James Blunt. He confirmed in a BBC interview in 2010 that he had been given a direct command to overpower the Russian soldiers and had declined to carry it out. Blunt later became one of the most commercially successful British pop musicians of the 2000s. The BTR-80 had, in a roundabout way, preserved a music career. The vehicle returned to Chechnya in the Second War of 1999. Russia had absorbed some of the Grozny lessons. Artillery preparation was heavier. Columns were now escorted by anti-aircraft guns whose high-elevation weapons could clear the rooftop positions the BTR turrets still struggled to reach. Losses were lower. The city was still destroyed. In August 2008, BTR-80s of the Russian 58th Army drove through the Roki Tunnel into South Ossetia during the 5-day war against Georgia. Georgian forces, who also operated BTR-80s, lost several vehicles in the fighting, the same type, on both sides, in the same engagement. In August 2015, a BTR-82A with a Russian-speaking crew was filmed in Latakia, Syria, hull number 111. Investigative outlet Bellingcat analysed the footage and identified it as the first credible visual confirmation of Russian armoured vehicles operating in the Syrian civil war. Moscow denied it. The vehicle was there. In Ukraine, from February 22, 2022 onward, the BTR-80 family became the most destroyed wheeled armoured vehicle in the conflict. The open-source intelligence project Oryx, which counts only visually confirmed losses with photographic evidence, recorded at least 192 BTR-80 and BTR-82A family vehicles destroyed, abandoned or captured on the Russian side as of late 2024. Of those, 58 were baseline BTR-80s, and 134 were the upgraded BTR-82A variant. Ukrainian forces began operating the captured vehicles against their original owners. Major General Andrei Sukhovetsky, deputy commander of the Russian 41st Combined Arms Army, was killed by a Ukrainian sniper near Hostomel on February 28, 2022. He had been travelling in the column of BTR-82 as that advanced from Belarus. He was the first Russian general killed in the invasion. On paper, the American M113 tracked carrier looked like a comparable vehicle. In practice, the two served different armies with different philosophies. The M113 was lighter, simpler, and far more widely produced, with roughly 80,000 built over its production run, and it offered better cross-country traction on soft ground. The BTR-80 offered a heavier weapon, true amphibious capability without preparation, and faster road speed. Neither vehicle stopped an anti-tank rocket. The question was never armour. The question was whether the soldiers inside could be delivered to their objective quickly enough to survive the approach. The BTR-80's closest Soviet rival was the tracked BMP-2 infantry fighting vehicle, with its stabilised 30mm autocannon and anti-tank guided missiles. The BMP-2 could fight armour, the BTR-80 could not, but the BTR-80 cost a fraction of a BMP-2, required less maintenance, and could carry 7 soldiers in marginally more space. Soviet Doctrine assigned BMPs to tank regiments and BTRs to motor rifle regiments. In practice, both proved lethally thin in Grozny. More than 35 nations have operated the BTR-80 or its direct derivatives. Russia delivered 555 vehicles to Hungary between 1996 and 1999 as partial payment of Soviet-era debts. Hungary, a NATO member since 1999, became the largest non-Russian operator of the type in Europe. From January 2024 through June 2025, Hungary sold 108 of those ex-Soviet vehicles to Serbia, a neighbour that fought against NATO in the same Kosovo conflict the BTRs had been used to influence. The empire paid its debts in vehicles. Its former adversaries are now reselling them at a profit. South Korea received BTR-80s from Russia, in partial settlement of its own Soviet-era debt. Russian vehicles, operated by a United States ally, positioned across from North Korea, which also operates BTR-80s. The irony requires no embellishment. Romania license-built the design as the TAB Zimbru. Ukraine developed its own reworked variant, used by Jordanian and Iraqi forces. Iraq ordered 98 ex-Hungarian vehicles refurbished by Polish and Ukrainian engineers in 2005. Those vehicles fought against the Islamic State from 2014 onward. The baseline BTR-80 is no longer in new production. Its replacement in Russian service is the BTR-82A, which entered service in December 2012 with a stabilised 30mm autocannon, 300 horsepower engine, satellite navigation, and spool liners inside the hull. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu stated in July 2023 that deliveries of the BTR-82A had increased fourfold since the beginning of the Ukraine invasion. The intended long-term successor, the wheeled K-17 Bumerang, has not yet been fielded at scale. The losses continue, the production continues. The vehicle that was supposed to be obsolete is still being built. 1984, the Alzheimer's machinery construction plant, 8 wheels, 7mm of steel, 1 engine. It was underpowered for the terrain it was asked to cross. Its armour stopped rifle rounds and little else. Its radios broadcast in clear voice on frequencies any trained enemy could monitor. Its dismount hatches, improved as they were, still left soldiers exposed on the vehicle's flanks during contact. It had no stabilised gun for the first decade of its service life. It had no modern thermal sights. It was never intended to fight tanks, and it could not survive when tanks turned against it. And yet, in the mountain passes of Afghanistan, it drove 10 kilometres on a destroyed wheel and brought its crew home. In the streets of Grozny, it absorbed lessons so brutal they reshaped an entire army's doctrine. On a Kosovo airfield, it achieved in one night what diplomacy had been unable to secure. In Syria, it confirmed the presence of a superpower before that superpower admitted it was there. In Ukraine, it is still moving, still being captured, and still appearing in footage from the front line under new flags. More than 35 armies have trusted it with their soldiers. 40 years after its designers left Gorky for Alzheimer's, it is still being manufactured. The empire that ordered it collapsed in 1991. The vehicle outlived the empire. It was Soviet. It was imperfect. And it is still killing today.